Bourgeois versus Proletarian Pedagogy. Bourgeois pedagogy played a progressive role compared to feudalism when it introduced universal education, the promotion and training of all children and adolescents, and opposed military drills and humiliating authoritarianism in schools. However, Friedrich Engels criticized its content as early as 1845, quote, "that religion has been elevated to the foremost subject of instruction, and that children's memories are crammed with incomprehensible dogmas and theological distinctions, while all reasonable education is disgracefully neglected." End quote. Lenin characterized the goals and direction of this reactionary bourgeois education, stating that, quote, "the capitalists were only interested in training and disciplining obedient and drilled workers." End quote. However, this education towards narrow-mindedness could not satisfy the thirst for knowledge of the working class and its youth. Thus, the educational efforts of the emerging socialist movement found great support among workers. Quote, "I have sometimes heard workers, whose velvet coats barely held together, speak with more knowledge about geological, astronomical, and other subjects than some educated bourgeois in Germany." End quote. Reich Chancellor Bismarck, on the other hand, was compelled to adopt a dual strategy. On the one hand, the anti-socialist law was introduced to curb Marxist influence from 1878 to 1990. The then revolutionary social democracy and its mass activities were banned and suppressed. On the other hand, between 1871 and 1887, the German Empire waged a seemingly progressive cultural war against Pope Pius IV and the Catholic Church. Bismarck used bourgeois pedagogy against the Catholic Church, placing secular education under the control of the new nation-state. After 1874, civil marriage was introduced as a legal norm. Bismarck's social laws and state-sanctioned marriage for workers aimed to integrate the working class into the bourgeois state and family order, stabilizing social relations. The role of modern bourgeois social pedagogy. What was once the task of churches and Bismarck's state welfare system in the 19th century is now primarily carried out by social pedagogy or social work, run by the state, churches, and independent organizations. The youth rebellion of the late 1960s opposed the authoritarian and openly anti-communist traditions of the post-war period, which still retained many features of fascist ideology. Being revolutionary became fashionable among young people. Tens of thousands in Germany alone turned to Marxism-Leninism, with a significant portion organizing within the largely petit bourgeois ML movement. These youth groups became particularly attractive due to their cultural and educational activities. The ruling class had to react. This marked the birth of modern bourgeois social pedagogy. It became a crucial pillar of the bourgeois and petit bourgeois influence on youth. While acknowledging increasing social injustice and problems, it simultaneously promoted individual success strategies as a solution. Hans Thiersch, a professor at the University of Tübingen who trained thousands of social educators after 1970, saw the role of social pedagogy as, quote, how criticism of power structures could be connected with real possibilities for shaping society within the social state, end quote. This is the essence of the social pedagogy. Criticism of social conditions? Yes. Revolutionary thinking and action? No. It promotes the illusion of a social market economy, a social state, a liberal democratic order and peaceful foreign policy, while discouraging any discussion of the working class, capitalism, or class struggle. The modern anti-authoritarian movement as the ideological basis of bourgeois pedagogy. The modern anti-authoritarian movement presented itself as progressive and aligned with the sentiments of the petit bourgeois student revolts. The English school model, Summerhill, was widely admired as an anti-authoritarian educational approach. This intellectual trend incorporated modern anti-authoritarianism as a guiding principle for youth thinking, living and working. The petit bourgeois anti-authoritarian mindset, with its disorienting, demoralizing and disorganizing effects, has since shaped and influenced masses of young people, becoming a major obstacle to organizing a social youth movement. The petit bourgeois nature of anti-authoritarianism. Modern anti-authoritarianism represents a modified revival of the ideological laissez-faire pedagogy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. His historical merit was recognizing children as individuals rather than mere labor forces within families and workplaces. However, he viewed pedagogy merely as facilitating a child's self-development. His book, Emily or on Education from 1762 advocated for, quote, freedom for self-development. The boy does not learn through instruction or punishment, but through playing, romping, and idling, end quote. Today's modern social pedagogy praises Rousseau as the forefather of the anti-authoritarian movement. Laissez-faire principles have flourished wildly in educational practice. Small children should be equal in opinion with their parents. Children under 6 require no education, only empathetic guidance. And in kindergartens, a child's striving for autonomy should form the foundation of all pedagogical work. However, after years of laissez-faire pedagogy, the nationwide childcare information portal Kita.de from Germany warns of lasting psychological and physical development disorders. Quote, later in life, adults who were raised with laissez-faire principles struggle to maintain relationships and commitments. Laissez-faire parenting can lead to neglect, serious psychological disorder, and even addiction. End quote. True independence requires the ability to navigate daily life, take responsibility for oneself and society, and develop social and ecological awareness. Laissez-faire and anti-authoritarianism turned out to be tools of the ruling class, acting against the workers' movement. Quote, modern anti-authoritarianism has become a state-supporting philosophy, forming the ideological foundation of an education where everyone should live out their individual freedom without engaging in social goals or subjecting themselves to the discipline of the workers' movement. End quote. The crisis of bourgeois social pedagogy. Since the 2000s, bourgeois society has struggled with the consequences of its own ideological constructs. The crisis of the capitalist education system led to a crisis in bourgeois social pedagogy. Structural problems included a reduction in training positions, underfunding of child care centers, schools and universities, the closure of youth centers, a shortage of teachers, and increasing youth poverty. These developments coincided with parts of the youth rejecting hard labor conditions while clinging to an illusory ideal of petit bourgeois self-fulfillment and individual escape strategies. Instead of eliminating oppressive dependencies, bourgeois social pedagogy promoted a mass mentality of individualistic, egoistic, and directionless living. The contradictions of modern social pedagogy led to a reassessment by Professor Thiersch in 2006, quote, "Its primary task is ensuring a tolerable life within the giving oppressions, fatalism, and distortions through encouragement and support." End quote. Proletarian socialist pedagogy. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels exposed the class character of all education and laid the foundation for proletarian pedagogy. Lenin emphasized the unity of theory and practice, criticizing the capitalist system's divide between knowledge and practical life. Soviet educator Antonov Makarenko, whom I want to make a separate video on, successfully rehabilitated millions of homeless children in post-revolutionary Russia through a combination of discipline and self-governance. Similarly, Mao Zedong's Cultural Proletarian Revolution sought to reform China's educational system, making it a tool of socialist transformation. Under socialism, education is not an isolated individual pursuit, but a collective process aimed at developing class consciousness, solidarity, and a commitment to social progress. Unlike bourgeois education, which prioritizes competition and individual success, socialist pedagogy fosters cooperation and shared responsibility in learning. Kindergartens, schools, workplaces, and communities become centers of collective education, where theory and practice merge to prepare for active participation in the building of society. Collective education also ensures that knowledge is not a privilege of the elite, but a shared resource of the masses. Students learn through collaboration, mutual aid, and direct engagement with social and productive labor. This approach strengthened critical thinking, cultivates social responsibility, and counters the alienation fostered by capitalist individualism. As Mao Zedong emphasized, education must serve the people, quote, "Our educational policy must enable everyone who receives an education to develop morally, intellectually, and physically, and become a worker with both socialist consciousness and culture." End quote. Proletarian pedagogy fosters independent, socially responsible, and self-disciplined individuals. It teaches youth to apply dialectical methods in theory and practice, resisting the corruption and the corrupted influence of bourgeois individualism. Under today's conditions, proletarian pedagogy must serve as a comprehensive life school, instilling a proletarian way of thinking, working and living from an early age, acting as the strongest defense against bourgeois culture and moral decay in favor for collective well-being and education.